Yes, the picture on the front page shows you an awful lot of blue men and very, very few red women. And that's basically the number of women who are directors in top FTSE 100 companies. And there's only about 1 in 12 or 1 in 10 of them is women directors. Only 5 of the top 100 companies in the FTSE are run by women.
Is this because women aren't best placed to do this? I mean, they're suggesting gender.
Careful what you say.
But they're suggesting gender inequality here. But is it just that for these particular companies that they're looking at, that actually the women weren't the best candidates for the job?
Well, there's an awful lot of women the next layer down, and one of the suggestions in The Independent, and if you're interested in this, there's pages of it in The Independent, it's saying that the trouble is that companies are still run like fiefdoms, with cliques and personal relationships, and you get the same men being recycled around these companies. So the suggestion is that we're not getting a proper crack at the corporate whip.
I don't know.
I obviously have sympathy with that story.
Well,
I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think it is really?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Well, I don't know.
Look at the government. Which woman can you name? Theresa May. Why can you name her? Possibly because she wore leopard skin shoes. Come on, folks, give us a better crack of the whip.
It's just this, it's the idea of putting women or anybody into a position because of gender, whichever way around it works, because of gender rather than because of talent.
No, well, I would rather it was not because you were a friend of somebody. I think there's a lot of talented women out there.
And if they're being excluded because of gender, then something has to be done to address that.
But there's no suggestion that is the case.
Well, you just don't know.
Well, there's lots of suggestions in The Independent.
Well,
okay.
I'm sure. Let's talk.
Now to another female.
Yeah,
this is
meerkats.
Lily the meerkat.
There's a lot to be said for those particular adverts, which have caused a lot of interest in meerkats over recent years.
We all love them, and this one was looking for a mate, and the mate they'd found wasn't up to the job, and so they created a website, www.meerkatmatch.com, in which Lily was described as an alert, dark-eyed, inquisitive, free-spirited lady with a good sense of humour and enjoys fine dining, digging, and cosy nights in. And they found her a mate. This was a very happy story in the end. Mr. Darcy, who was a younger man.
Oh, right.
Younger meerkat. And he was flogged to her for 600 quid, did the business, and she's now got 4 babies. And if you want to see them, they're at Twin Lakes theme park near Melton Mowbray in Leicestershire.
You could have saved all the bother and just compared meerkats on websites, couldn't they?
I love the description of her being good at digging.
Yeah, well... Gold digging, possibly. Who knows? Who knows? Let's finish off. Running out of time, but let's talk in the Express about a hero
the dog of war. Well, during the war, this was a dog which was the only animal in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and she was brilliant at sniffing out food and water. And this dog was honoured with a Dickens Medal, and I think there were a lot of animals more, pigeons, horses, and it's great to see the animals remembered for the job that they do in war, as well as our brave soldiers.
Judy, and a great picture of Judy there too.
And she lived to be 13 years old.
Not a bad age, is it? Considering all she went through.
Exactly.
Lynn, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Tessa, thank you very much indeed. You can't beat that, Charlie.
What can you imagine anyone doing that at United?
I tell you what, they better win today. They better win.
Great characters there at Blackpool. Now then, let's check.
I can tell you that Joe was virtually throwing things at me with that, weren't you?
Only just a little caught on the hop.
Ah, perfect. And I tell you what, if you are watching in Blackpool this morning, send us an email, news@sky.com, text us an 84501, and just imagine this with tangerine dressing on it. You never know, it could be you at some point before too long. What do you reckon, Charlie?
Yeah, I think if they just survive in the Premier League, that'll be their cup,
I tell you, we've got to be as optimistic as that town crier. That's it for this hour of Sunrise, but coming up next hour, lots more on the top story as President Obama gives his support. Looking at the rest of the news this morning, here's Charlotte.
Thanks, Stephen. The number of people taking out short-term loans between paydays has quadrupled over the last 4 years. More than 1 million people have taken out the so-called payday loans, which often come with extremely high interest repayments. Kitty Logan has this report.
Why do you think you practice for that?
I was just thinking they must have such a good head for heights. It would be a difficult one to start off, wouldn't it?
I was going to say your first ever one.
Yeah, it'd be terrifying.
Yeah, oh well, you know, rather them than me, it looks fantastic. Charlotte, thank you. I'll see you in a little while. One or two emails that have come through to us here this morning. Charlotte?
Yeah, I've got one in particular here, actually, from a father who describes himself as concerned. He said, my son has been unemployed for 10 months. He's been successful in securing about £800 in loans from one company. He can't understand how his son can qualify. He says, I had to pay them off when he obviously couldn't pay back. So concern there about people, you know, the criteria at which these companies are looking at people.
Does that then cry out, Sarah, for more regulation in this?
Well, certainly we think there needs to be much more stringent checks on affordability. So, and not just the first time you go to a company, but when you come back again, because your circumstances may have changed. And companies need to share information so that people aren't going to multiple lenders at the same time.
How do you talk banks into giving out money in the shorter term? Because these people are going to be seen as high risk. The banks aren't going to want to take that risk at this time.
Well, they can price for us, so they can do, you know, slightly higher interest rates than they would do.
Sarah from Consumer Focus, thanks very much indeed. And do keep your thoughts on that one coming through. We'll be following it throughout the day. News@sky.com. Text us on 84501. This is Sky News. Let's have a look at the rest of the news this morning with Charlotte.
Thanks, Stephen. The number of people taking out short-term loans to solve their cash flow problems between paydays has quadrupled over the last 4 years. It's estimated...
It's got to be worth a look, hasn't it?
I think it does. It does look good.
It looks fantastic, especially in 3D. We're going to be talking movies, actually, at 11:15. No, 11:45 this morning. We'll be gone by 11:15, won't we? Oh, thank heavens for that. It's been a long morning already. Charlotte, thank you. Oh dear. Now, Australians. So, movie time now, and the film critic Dave Calhoun is here to take us through the weekend's big movie releases. Good to see you.
Morning.
Let's start with what sounds like a classic, Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, this is a... we know we're in the middle of action, fantasy, family movie season now, in the middle of the school holidays with this film. Sorcerer's Apprentice carry you through, and Nicolas Cage, always good at, you know, camping it up in a kind of villainous way. This young actor, Jay Baruchel's pretty good as well, and Alfred Molina as, you know, a stalwart of British acting as well. Yeah, it's not a bad family film.
OK, let's have a look. I have to say, that quite appeals to me.
Yeah, as I say, it's because you've got Nicolas Cage in there, you've got Alfred Molina, they're able to play these pantomime villain characters very, very well. And also you've got this wide-eyed kid in the middle of it, doesn't know what's going on. He's just trying to get on with his girlfriend, live a student life in New York, and suddenly he's got these crazy wizards in his life.
Some nice effects in it, though.
Yeah, there are. You saw the mirror thing there, and I think because it all takes place in the real world, in New York as well, there's an element of humour, and, you know, you can recognise the world in which it's taking place.
Let's turn our attention to The Last Airbender.
Yeah, another fantasy film, another family movie, you know, a film which is supposed to be appeal to parents as well as kids. Unfortunately, there's these communities who are known as airbenders or waterbenders who are able to do what you're seeing there, you know, manipulate these elements. It just seems to drag on forever, this film. It's never very clear what the story is. The effects, that looks pretty nifty, but the effects generally aren't very impressive. The 3D doesn't really do it any favours either. So it's one of the many films on which 3D has been added afterwards because it's become such a craze.
Right.
Unless you know the cartoon series, unless you really do enjoy fantasy films and trying to get your head around something that doesn't make a huge amount of sense, I'd say don't bother with this one. OK, well, let's tempt ourselves, if we can, with a quick clip. What you mean, it didn't seem to have a great deal going for it. No, the worrying thing is it comes from a director, M. Night Shyamalan, who not very long ago made The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, and he just seems to, his career really does seem to be going down the pan, really.
It is a shame. Signs was fantastic, wasn't it? Let's quickly finish off with Le Refuge.
This is a very sweet, small, short story of a French film about...
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to catch on the sports headlines for you now, Charlie.
Steve, thanks, yes.
Charlie, thank you. Lots of money emails coming in this morning, Charlotte.
We have indeed. Yeah, Gary Pinder says he'd never take one of those payday loans out. He says, if I can't afford it, I would save for it. He said a friend took one out and paid 3,500% APR. Mark Harrison said, though, if people can't get a loan and need to put food on the table, what are they supposed to do? Roger reckons some of the banks are just as bad. He says, I was recently granted an overdraft by my bank, but the charges amounted to a unbelievable 36,500% APR, which does seem pretty incredible. We've also had a comment from Dale Chapman, CEO of Wage Day Advance. That's one of the companies. And he says with banks tightening their lending, if we don't lend this money, who would? But he's also in favour of more regulation, actually. He says it's not a long-term solution.
Oh, that's an interesting view, isn't it, to get from the company. Charlotte, thank you. Lots of sport today. Start of the Premier League, start of the SPL. Is the weather going to hold out for it, Joe?
I don't think so, not really.
Well, that's it from the Sunrise team for this morning. But still to come, Saturday Live with Samantha. She'll have all the top stories, including Barack Obama giving his support.